Welcome, everybody. Thank you for attending our Present Your Thesis, Dissertation, or Research event today. We have Nefeli Tentoma here to present her recent master's research called Virtually Reconstructing the Past, Identifying Authenticity in a Virtual Reality Application for the Library of Pantainos in Athens. So Nefeli is a surveyor engineer with a diploma from the National Technical University of Athens in rural surveying and geoinformatics engineering. She recently graduated from KU Leuven, obtaining an advanced master's degree in conservation of monuments and sites from the Raymond Lemare International Center for Conservation. At the moment, she is working in Belgium at Ellipse Landmeters, a surveying office specializing in documentation of monuments and historic buildings. So welcome, Nefeli. Thank you for presenting your work today. And I'll pass it on to you to present your research, followed by some feedback and discussion with a few of the experts that we have attending today.
Thank you very much, Elise. Let me share my screen. Okay. And okay, so hello everyone. Thank you very much for joining today for the presentation of my diploma thesis, which I have defended in September, and I obtained my degree. Today's presentation, its contents are actually in alignment with the basic chapters of my thesis. And as you can see, it has both a theoretical and a technical part. Even though today I will focus mostly on the technical aspects of my thesis and present more briefly the theoretical background. So, introducing the topic. My thesis is mainly focusing on a particular category of cultural heritage, namely archaeological remains. And for this type of heritage, usually there is a lack of sources describing the initial state of these sites. And as a result, for their virtual reconstructions, personal interpretations, assumptions, and hypotheses are usually unavoidable in order to have a cohesive to formulate a cohesive scenario. So when it comes to the presentation of these virtual reconstructions, we can see that sometimes there is actually no differentiation between their authentic and speculative parts, which could also create some false impressions to the end users, but at the same time, it raises concerns about their authenticity. So the main research question was how to preserve authenticity in the virtual reconstructions of archaeological remains, with the aim of creating visually informative representations, but not necessarily visually aesthetic ones. So for the authenticity in virtual reconstructions of archaeological remains, I undertook research on the existing international documents and guidelines when it comes to authenticity in both physical reconstructions, but also in virtual reconstructions. And then the key findings from these research and the best practices were the two factors for ensuring authenticity in virtual reconstructions. So the first factor is intellectual transparency. So actually defining the level of authenticity, the information sources that were used, the interpretation process, and the hypothesis. But at the same time, creating an enhanced user experience with the aim of connecting with the users, of stimulating feelings, and also avoiding to create an overly academic outcome. Also, I did some research on extended reality tools with the aim of preserving cultural heritage. And so there is a variety of extended reality tools and applications that could be used. And these examples that I found, I classified them into 6 categories. And these categories really helped me later on to define the reality type that I would use for my own application and the required technical equipment. The case study is the Library of Pantainos, which is located in the city of Athens in Greece. This site is actually within the ancient Agora in Athens. This is located on the northern side of the Acropolis Hill, and the site of the library itself is at the eastern side of the ancient Agora, as we can see on the map. So the Library of Pantainos was erected in 100 AD during the Roman times, and it mainly consisted of the main hall where the scrolls of the library were kept. This was connected with the courtyard with the peristyle. So these two were the central rooms of the library, and around them there were many shops and stoas. Nowadays, as we can see, there's only some remains of the library, mainly some foundations of few of its rooms and some of its walls, but not to their full height. So quite a dilapidated state. So for the virtual reconstruction of the library, the first step was to actually have the digital geometric documentation of the archaeological site, which resulted in a reality-based model. And then afterwards, collected information sources. And then these primary and secondary sources were combined, processed, and all the data were interpreted in a way in order to have a reconstructive hypothesis. Later on, based on this hypothesis, the 3D virtual reconstruction and the 3D modeling procedure followed. And finally, we had a source-based model. But at this point, I would like to mention that this source-based model and this virtual reconstruction is only a first version of the virtual reconstruction of the site. Later on, it should be evaluated, assessed, and maybe a new version of it can be created. So from the source-based model that was created, the next step was the depiction of its authenticity and finally its presentation to the end users. Focusing on the digital geometric documentation, the data acquisition lasted 2 days. To the left, you can see the archaeological site with all the ground control points that were measured with a total station in both days. And then to the right, you can see the areas that were documented with a drone, but also the positions where the terrestrial laser scanner was placed for documenting a specific part of the site. So for processing the photos that were captured with a drone through photogrammetry, we had the first dense point cloud, but as we can see, there was a lot of noise and vegetation that was covering the site. So this noise was later on filtered, but obviously there were some gaps created on the 3D model, and it was decided that these gaps would be filled with a method of retopology and also by using the scans from the terrestrial laser scanning, which eventually resulted in the textured 3D model of the whole site of the library. So as an overview, to the left, we can see the devices that were implemented, and the one that was used the most was the drone. And to the right, you can also see the software for processing all the acquired data. For the virtual reconstruction, due to time constraints, only a part of the library was selected, namely the main hall and the courtyard with its peristyle, which is the red area indicated in the presentation. The reference date was 100 AD. And the target group of the virtual reconstruction would be the general public, but also field specialists. So moving on to the collection of information sources, my main source was the digital archive of the American School of Classical Studies in Athens, which is the organization that also undertook the excavations of the site. So from there, I got both visual and textual sources. But then I had some additional academic publications that helped me a lot for understanding the typology of Roman libraries and Roman architecture. So here we can see the process of the 3D modeling for creating the virtual reconstruction. It is very important to mention that the level of detail that was used was set to 100, so a more abstract model, as you can see, basic dimensions and volumes, and with the absence of most of the details of the structure. And this decision was also made keeping in mind that later on this 3D model will also be used in an extended reality application. So as you can see here, either based on drawings or based on the reality-based model that was documented from the site, we had the final 3D model of the virtual reconstruction. And then afterwards, the three main aspects that actually characterize the virtual reconstruction is its material, so the building and manufacturing systems, the appearance, so the textures of the surfaces, and finally the shape, the basic dimensions and spatial position. Thus, what I decided to have two different models, one depicting the authenticity of material, and then a second one depicting the authenticity of geometry and the level of evidence. Focusing on the authenticity of material, this model does not correspond to a realistic model, but rather than one that depicts the original materials. So as a result, we had two different types of textures. We had the photorealistic textures that were corresponding to existing elements depicted in photographs or historic and documented evidence. And then there were also more generic textures for elements that there was no evidence, no clear evidence about their materials. This is the model depicting the authenticity of material. This is the exterior. And for example, as you can see, the stone texture of the walls was actually captured from stones that still exist on site, whereas the color of the clay tiles for the roof was mainly based on other historical evidence from archaeological reports. So that's why they are colored. But then if we move at the interior and to the courtyard with the peristyle, you can see there is also a more generic texture of the gray floors, since there was no evidence about its material. But the floors, the peristyle floor was based on photographs from archaeological reports of the American school, and the marble textures that you can see at the columns were actually captured from marbles that still exist on the original site. And this is the logic for this model. This was also used for the textures of the main hall. So again, the floor was based on photographs and again the marble from the site. But as you can see here, the cabinets where the scrolls were kept, even though we knew that they were made out of wood, since there was no clue about what type of wood was used, it was preferred to give a more generic gray color so as not to create false impressions for the end users. Then the second model was the one depicting the authenticity of geometry and the level of evidence. For this model, the graphic scale of the level of historic and archaeological evidence was used, which actually implements color codes to indicate the used information sources for every 3D asset. Even though some graphic scales already exist, I decided to attempt and create a new one. So for the created graphic scale, the level classification is mostly based on the type of the information and not on the type of the source. And what I mean by that, for example, if there is a text and a drawing that are both aiming to document the site, they would both be at the same level, even though they represent different types of sources. Then when it comes to the colors themselves, I decided to have hues that are connected with tranquility, calmness, serenity, and harmony. So here you can see the graphic scale, the proposed graphic scale. It has 8 levels in total, and these levels are classified in 4 main categories, namely existing in situ, archaeological reports, analogy, and estimation. So each category has a specific color. But then we can see that within its category, the colors change from darker to lighter tones, indicating greater to lesser accuracy. But while trying to apply this graphic scale on my 3D model, I saw that there were some elements that a combination of levels was used for their creation. That's why I also created a supplementary color scale that the colors actually derive from the combination of the original ones, and they also have the same logic with the darker and lighter tones. So here we can see the model of the authenticity of geometry and the levels of evidence. So just from looking at the colors, somebody can understand that, for example, the roof was mainly based on analogy to other Roman libraries, whereas the foundations were based on elements that exist on the site itself. And there is also gray for parts that were mostly estimated in relation to the rest of the information that was provided. Then in the courtyards, we can see that there are colors of brown that indicate that they were created based on archaeological reports, but also the green columns that indicate the combination of elements that existed on the site and the archaeological reports. Normally, what we see is that the more we move to the upper part of the model, the more it's more uncertain or based on estimation. And then moving on to the main hall, we can see, since there were not a lot of information on site for this room, its virtual reconstruction was mostly based in analogy to other Roman libraries. And that's why it's mostly purple. So afterwards, the next step was the creation of a virtual reality application for the library of Pantainos. So based on the categories that I researched earlier, the main goal of this application would be a reconstruction, but also education and exploration. As mentioned earlier, it would be virtual reality, and the user would be able to use a desktop screen and a keyboard and mouse to navigate in the application. And the development was made in the Unreal Engine environment. So this is the opening scene of the application. So the user can actually walk as if he's on site. It's a first-person navigation. He can move around with the keyboard, but also rotate 360 degrees by using the mouse. And then we can also see that there is a menu that pops up on the top with 3 possible selections. So by change model, the user can switch between the authenticity of material and the authenticity of geometry. For example, here, the authenticity of geometry will have full color codes and the graphic scale, and actually they represent. And you can still navigate all the virtual construction and also of terrain. This is the terrain that was captured covers parts of the library. So in this way, the user can see what's underneath, and it can inspect clearly and better all the different materials and colors of the virtual reconstruction of the library. Then, so for example, in the main room, you can see the floor, but also if it's interesting for him to see which parts are nowadays covered, you can switch back on the terrain and see the relation between the site of how it is today and how it used to be. And moving on to the exterior, some blocking volumes were added so that the user will not fall off the 3D model. And simple terrain was just added as a landscape around the virtual reconstruction. The menu also can be turned on and off, and when the user decides to quit the application, it can switch off. And finally, based on the research and the case study, first of all, when it comes to the virtual reconstruction, I realized that a multidisciplinary team is more than necessary for virtual reconstruction. So experts that have different backgrounds and professions cooperating to have a cohesive result for virtual reconstructions. For the proposed graphic scale that I created, of course, it was only applied to one case study, which is the one of the library. So it should definitely be tested on different other case studies of archaeological remains to see if these colors or these levels could actually be applied to other archaeological sites. And of course, there are many more possibilities for the virtual reality application. There should be an evaluation through a user study. Also, the interface of the application could be enhanced. Furthermore, it could be transformed to a web VR application, or it could be fully immersive with the use of head-mounted displays. Moreover, an HBeam application could be created where pop-up windows would indicate the information sources that were used for the virtual reconstruction, or even the depiction of alternative scenarios for specific areas that their reconstruction was not very sure. And finally, with the addition of time, a 4D virtual reality application could be created, indicating the different building phases of the site. So thank you very much, everyone, for attending, and thank you very much, CIPA, for having me today and giving me the chance to present my thesis.
Thank you, Nefeli, so much. I think it was really, really inspiring and really interesting listening to you, and finally, also from our side, finally understanding what do you do, and thank you for sharing. We will have later one section of a Q&A for all the people that listen, but we will now give a word to our experts, which were kind to give us their time and to provide the feedback to Nefeli. If even in the future she wants to continue with this research, I think it can be very useful having their point of view. So I will present Fabrizio Banfi, our first expert, who is a full-time researcher
everybody.
Hello, Fabrizio. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you too.
He is the full-time researcher at Politecnico di Milano, and he has been conducting research in the fields of building information modeling, 3D surveying, scan-to-beam, extended reality, and virtual museums. So he has more than 70 published articles in international scientific journals and national one. He has a lot of experience with teaching activities as a professor of a school of specialization in architecture and landscape heritage, the doctoral school of Department of Architecture, and a BIM master program. Additionally, he collaborates as a lecturer with the other international universities and institutes. And he's also part of Gicarus Lab at Politecnico di Milano, which collaborates with different public institutions, national and international, in a field of digitalization of built heritage, digitalization and documentation. So he's going to provide his comment, and I will present the second expert who is with us today, Tomas Barnas. And he is the founder and CEO of Overhead 4D, which specializes in digital recording and modeling of cultural heritage and archaeology, including 3D scanning, aerial recording, and virtual reality. Tomas has a doctorate of arts and master's of arts in industrial and product design from the Technical University of Košice. His professional experience focuses on photogrammetry, laser scanning, and drone surveying for cultural heritage sites and buildings. So we have two experts, core experts in exactly, I think, this topic, and it can be very interesting seeing what they think about it and give you the comments. So please, Fabrizio, and then Tomas, if you can, I'm giving you word.
Thank you so much, Dina, for your introduction presentation. So I have just a few comments. I think that the work is very interesting. In particular, the virtual reconstruction, I think that as the proper base, starting from drawings, historical reports, and so on, and also to see directly the virtual reconstruction, it's very, very interesting. I think that when we talk about the scan to BIM, to XR, or better, HBIM, I think that it's very important also to introduce new paradigms such as interactivity, immersion, in order to improve the communication of our built heritage. I think that this more or less field it's like more or less a virtual museum. I work a lot with our municipalities and so on. I think that it's very challenging to create a proper virtual reconstruction and also to insert, for instance, photogrammetry data and so on. The work is very, very interesting in this specific context. And I have just a question for the student. Which is the next step for this work? I think that it's very interesting, but at the same time, we need to share this richness. So I worked a lot in Altamura for the Neanderthal cave, and I created, for instance, a QR code. It's a link between the virtual reconstruction and the reality, and everybody now can see directly the bones, the remains, and so on. I'd like to figure out better which is the future for this work. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments and your feedback. Well, when it comes to your question, I think based on the research that I did and all the different applications, the extended reality tools that are already available, depending on the site itself, there are many possibilities that virtual reconstructions can be communicated with the public. So for my case, for example, because of the site that the visitor couldn't be on site, it was one of the main reasons why I chose virtual reality, but also augmented reality or mixed reality. I think they are very important tools that they can enhance a visitor's experience. So all the information that you have from the virtual reconstruction and all the sources that are behind it, they can definitely be combined and be presented to the public even when you're on site. I think also turning it to an AR, it would be very interesting, because nowadays we have our mobile phones, and like you said, also with the QR codes, is way easier for a visitor to view all this information from his own device. So trying to change that to something more approachable and easier to the public, I think it would be maybe a next step.
Perfect. Thank you.
So if it's my turn, then thank you, Nefeli, for a great presentation. I can totally agree with that, what you just said on the end, that the possibilities are huge. And what I would like to emphasize is that also current days or nowadays, it's really the time when the interest on virtual reality or all kind of immersive technologies is growing more than any time before. So I'm focused on this, what you have done like around 8 years, and it was very complicated on the beginning, like to convince and like show to people like why they should need this. But your presentation nicely showed all the steps, like from the capturing data, combining it with the plans, reconstructions. What I really liked was the color scene, and now not about the colors, but about the idea of showing. And I don't mean the colors were bad, but I mean like the idea behind this is great, to showcase this, what is based on a scanning, what is based on some historical research, and what is more a guess. Because this is something what we are like meeting with many our projects, that historians, researchers, they are also afraid of sharing with you some informations if they are not exact, because they can be criticized for that. So I really like the way how you showcase like this gray color is just more or less guess, and as I said, like very nice steps towards that. I would also say that the last sentence of your presentation was that you need a team for this kind of work. And this is exactly what I just had in mind, like whether you have tried to do all the steps by your own, like with all the softwares and everything. So this is great, because this is amazing to see it and try it and see how complex it is. Because if you like, each of your slide was like a separated task. Yeah, and then you have to complete this task, and it's not always easy. So for me, like, thank you for the presentation. It was great. And yeah, I don't really have a question there. Like, it would be nice, like, or maybe a question like, what was your idea to do further with this project? Because as you said, this is a little part of the museum. So maybe it would be nice just to continue and accomplish it like the entire project. That would be my suggestion and not another question. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments. I can really relate to all that you have said, and especially for the multidisciplinary team. It's more than necessary. I know that I didn't have the knowledge for all the necessary steps, and it was indeed quite challenging. But also for the site itself, right now, because of time constraints and my knowledge on using specific software, I chose only a small part. But through the historical research that I did, all the possibilities that are on this site and what you can present to the people, the different building phases, there are so many that it could definitely be a virtual reconstruction per building phase, so that we can really see the whole history of the site. So personally, I would love to see an application like that in the future. I believe it will be totally worth it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for the feedback from both of our experts and your responses, Nefeli. I also just want to take the time to thank some of our CIPA executive committee members for being here, Andreas Georgopoulos and Demetrios Skarlatos. So thank you both for attending and taking the time to be here, as well as some of our other EPs for being here as well, Margarita and Danny. It's really great to have so many people joining us today. So at this time, we'd like to open the floor for questions from the audience. Feel free to turn your microphone and or your camera on to ask a question. You can raise your hand and we'll see who has a question just using one of the reaction buttons. Or you could also feel free to put a question in the chat if you prefer not to use the microphone.
Okay, I'll give everybody a chance to think. In the meantime, Nefeli, thank you again so much for presenting your work. It's great to see, with us CIPA EPs, it's a bit mysterious what we're all doing in our personal lives. And then for you to come and show us what you've been working so hard on, it's fantastic to see. I was wondering about sort of contextualizing this library among the other, where it's located, it's such a popular site for tourists, right? Are you aware of any of the other kind of VR experiences, perhaps already in existence, or how your work could tie in with what's already going on in that area?
So since this library is in the ancient Agora, and one of the most known site there is the Stoa of Attalos, which is the site that has been fully reconstructed, like physically reconstructed. I know that there have been many applications like virtual museums for the Stoa of Attalos. There has already been an augmented reality application for another Stoa in the ancient Agora. So there are many projects going on since this site. It's mainly ruins, so the visitor can see just the remains of these structures. And there's also so many overlapping layers of history that it's indeed quite difficult to envision what's in front, what am I looking at. So I think this site is indeed something very interesting to investigate further. What are the possibilities for extended reality tools and bring back to life what used to be there?
Thanks. I sense potentially some future collaboration with you and the city of Athens, maybe. I'm going to just pass the ball to Demetrius because I see there's a question in the chat. Demetrius, did you want to just ask, or shall we?
Okay, let me
Put you on the
ask it
spot.
myself. Okay, great work, Nefeli. Thank you very much for it. It's an open question. I mean, this kind of recreations, how can they be used, if they are right, if they are not right, and so on. I wanted to make a question. If you were to do it again from scratch, can you estimate how many work hours you would need to do, let's say, the whole library?
Oof.
Now
Well,
that you have the experience and you can.
yeah, well, the library itself, I know I have quite basic knowledge. I use the 3ds Max software to do the 3D modeling procedure. So yeah, I think it would be like a few months, more or less like 2 months, let's say, for the library. Since there are many archaeological reports that help to understand how the library would be in the past. So I would say within a few months, just the part of the library, because in the archaeological site, there are many other buildings. So the area that we documented actually consists of more buildings and not just the library, since parts of it were later on incorporated in later Roman buildings. So I would say like, yeah, a couple of months for the library, because it's quite a small building and it's mostly the stoas and the SOPs around the main areas. It wouldn't take that long for the library. And now with the knowledge, it would go a bit faster, knowing the 3D modeling procedure.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.
Yes, Andreas.
Well, thank you very much. I cannot resist the taking the word and saying a few words. Congratulations, Nefeli. I don't have any questions for Nefeli because I exhausted them while supervising the thesis. But you know that I had, let's say, a small contribution to the other reconstructions that Nefeli mentioned, both for the museum in the Stoa of Atalos, and we have Margarita here. It was her undergraduate thesis, or diploma thesis, as we call it, and of course, in the other one for the Stoa, the big Stoa, it's called in the Agora. But just a comment coming from the question of Dimitris, is that with these virtual reconstructions, we can reconstruct virtually with many different alternatives what we have in front of us without hurting the real monument. And this is a very big advantage, because as you probably know, archaeologists and people who take care of the monuments, they don't want them to be touched. They don't want them to be damaged by a reconstruction that perhaps in the future it will prove wrong. We have this situation in the real reconstructions of the Parthenon, and now it had to be dismantled and reconstructed the correct way, which after, let's say, 10, 15, 20, or whatever years, it might also prove wrong. But virtual reality and virtual reconstructions give us this opportunity of reconstructing with different alternatives and presenting the monument as it used to be, because now we live in the era of image and we need to see the reconstructed monument, and we cannot just read descriptions. Imagination has lowered a lot nowadays. So it gives us the opportunity of reconstructing something with various alternatives and maybe decide which is the one that we should reconstruct in reality. So thank you.
Thank you, Andreas. So if there are no other questions, I would just like to check as well if Margarita, you'd like to offer any comments on or feedback on the work.
Well, I just want to congratulate once again Felix. He did a great job, and I was really happy to see the presentation now because I didn't have the chance to see her during her the defense. So I'm really happy and for her, and I was certain that she would do a great job, but now I'm really excited that I had the chance to see it, and I wish her all the best for her next steps, even if they are not related to the library. Maybe now she has other plans and she wants to reconstruct other monuments, and I hope we will have the chance to see those too.
Thank you, Margarita.
I maybe have a short question.
Yes, please.
I would also like to congratulate on a great presentation and really interesting topic that I myself I'm also struggling with somehow. I wanted to ask you if there is any plan for the future to implement further archaeological surveys or theoretical works that are dealing with the object, with the complex, or is this over now?
Hello. So for now, from what I know, there are no new excavations, for example, or researches going on for the specific site. So this is what I've found from the American school is mostly all the information that are available from their archive. But if they decide to work again, for example, in the future, it would be interesting to see if there would be any adaptations, for example, for the virtual reconstruction, because now, yeah, we have one version. Even if there are new findings generally on the Roman libraries, there could be changes in the virtual reconstruction. So it's an ongoing process, I would say.
Thank you. I ask this because this is a question that I really often get. What is it with this data that we are producing now, and how is it going to be dealt in the future when the times change and the format change? That's why I wanted to ask you how do you see that? Thanks.
Well, I think that is where we will wrap up our Q&A for today. So thank you everyone for participating. This is the last presentation that we have scheduled for this year. So please look out for a call for new applications to the PYTDR initiative in the new year. And I'll just pass it off to our EP executive, Michelle, for a few final words.
Thanks. I just wanted to make a couple of quick announcements. As Elise said, new calls for PYTDR are coming in January. So Eva, if you are going to be, defending yours in the near future, you're welcome to apply, and we'll try to find a round of experts also to give you feedback. Even if you're in the middle of your research and you want some feedback to continue your research, we're here for you. I just want to also thank our experts, of course, Fabrizio and Tomas, and our executive committee members, Andreas, Demetrius, for your input. I wanted to say, unofficially, we will be announcing in our December newsletter 2 things. Tomas, Overhead 4D, is going to be CIPA's newest sustaining member starting in 2025. So thank you so much for joining CIPA in that capacity. Round of applause, Tomas.
Thank you.
And then as well, Joe and I, who are the current co-chairs of CIPA EP, are going to step down, and Margarita and Yoginder are going to step up as our new CIPA EP co-chairs. So look forward to their enthusiasm and a fresh start in 2025. Thanks again, Elise and Dina, and the entire PYTDR organizing committee for getting this one together. And we will see everybody in the new year.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
That's
Thank
it.
you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you very much. Thank you all very
Bye.
much. And,
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you all.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Happy holidays.
Bye bye.